Tim Walz removed those protections. Tim Walz then also removed the reporting requirements. Now, we know the number is disputed, but we know somewhere at least 5, maybe 8, maybe more babies actually were born alive, and they were callously left to die without any medical care. So that's where we're fighting the issue right now, because it clarifies the issue so much, and it's where Democrats have brought the issue. It's not Republicans who have done that.
Well, Ryan, I saw your reaction to the after birth thing. Did you want to follow up on? I mean, Michael explained what happened in Minnesota, for example, which is it's a matter of not providing care, legalizing the declining to provide care. Is that not? I mean, that is a real thing that both Cuomo, it was something that Ralph Northam advocated for.
I guess, why don't we leave this to doctors? Who am I to,
because we're citizens of a
medical
self-governing republic and we have laws against murder. It's so amazing that the Democrats, who have been campaigning for socialized medicine for decades now, say on this one healthcare issue, we just need to get the government out of it. What are you talking about? We're citizens. We live in a self-governing republic. We have something to say about the laws. That's why we're all talking about an election here. And we're talking about a matter of life and death.
What's happening, everybody? Michael Knowles was recently interviewed by the progressive hosts of a show called Counterpoints. As always, Michael Knowles brought a compelling argument grounded in facts, data, and a strong moral perspective. Now, let's watch as Michael Knowles takes on supposedly challenging questions and lays out his pro-life case with clarity. Let's dive in.
And Democrats would say that the reason that they're competitive, or the reason that why they might even have a slight advantage at this point, is Trump's success in overturning Roe v. Wade, and that the country has kind of recoiled at that. What's your assessment of that? And tell me, for people who our ecosystems don't overlap enough, so a lot of our viewers might not know, what exactly your politics are, where you are on this side. My understanding is you're like pretty hardcore on the life side.
I prepped him, Michael.
Down the line. She prepped me a little bit. You're like down the line, as out there as you can get on it, right?
Yeah, I think we ought to protect babies. I think it's bad to kill babies. It's basically I guess that's an extreme position now. I used to be a kind of a moderate and common sense position.
I'm for protecting babies too. You want to elaborate on that?
We agree.
Yeah.
I don't think we really need to elaborate. I think it's bad to kill babies. So that would inform my election choices. I agree with you that Roe v. Wade's overruling is an issue in the campaign. I think it's really the only issue that helps Democrats at all, and then only in certain places. But conservatives have debated how to react to this. You've seen a lot of Republicans just basically trying to downplay the issue on the campaign trail, which is probably fine as a matter of prudence. I think what happened with Roe v. Wade being overruled is not that pro-lifers merely won a victory. It's not that Democrats won a political victory, as some of them claim. It's that the whole conversation changed. So now the Supreme Court says in the Dobbs ruling that the issue has to go back to the states. The Supreme Court could have said that the 14th Amendment provides equal protection, and so you can't kill babies anywhere. That's certainly an argument. Professor Robbie George, John Finnis made that argument in an amicus brief to the court. But that's not what they said. They said the issue goes back to the states and people can vote on it. And so the issue for pro-lifers is that when abortion has come up as a ballot initiative, the pro-abortion policies have succeeded. They've prevailed pretty much every time. So Republicans are in a bad position right now because we're in a whole new ballgame. And so what is required is to win hearts and minds and persuade people that it's wrong to kill babies and it's good to protect life at the state level. But that's not really a federal matter right now. The Supreme Court has ruled on it. So when Trump and J.D. Vance downplay the issue of abortion, I think they're doing so as a matter of political prudence, but it's also just common sense. They really have nothing to do with that issue right now. Unless the Supreme Court is going to reverse its position, which it's not, then that's really a matter for the states, and it's a matter for gubernatorial candidates and state legislature candidates to fight.
And not to debate the point, but just on the definition of babies again, do you think that an IUD kills babies?
Well, an IUD is a contraceptive device, right? So in principle, I'm not the biggest expert in contraception. I have 3 kids under 4, but from what I understand, that would prevent the conception of a baby. So preventing conception.
It in general prevents the implantation.
Oh, well, in as much, I suppose this would be similar to certain abortifacient drugs where the
Plan B.
the nature of it, like Plan B, is debated. And some people, you're being, I suppose, a little bit more blunt about it than many pro-sexual revolution types on the left. But many people argue that things like Plan B or things like IUDs are merely contraceptive and not abortifacient. But if they are
Hey, if you like videos like these, like, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. Let's get back to the video.
they prevent contraception. If they're abortifacient, they obviously involve abortions.
Yeah, it's just a matter of basic fact that sometimes they prevent implantation.
Right.
So,
Right,
so
but
you
I
would consider
suppose
that a baby. So you would say IUDs, if that's the case, if I'm right about that, that you think that IUDs, a woman with an IUD is like killing
Well,
babies.
the question
pretty
you're
regularly.
asking me, I guess the question you're asking me is, when do I think human life begins?
Mhm.
And so my
Yeah.
answer is, I think it begins at the beginning. I don't know when else you would say it begins. Now, of course, no one's really campaigning in this election.
Where's
they're
the
not even really
beginning?
campaigning on abortion, but no one's really campaigning against IUDs or any contraception or anything like that. We're pointing out that the Democrats have taken their
why
safe,
not?
legal, rare position. Well, the reason is because the
You
Democrats
just said
have
you're
moved the
voting on
goalpost.
kill.
I'm
You
happy
don't want to
give
kill
an answer
babies.
if you like, Ryan.
Yeah,
but-
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
so the reason that they're not campaigning on that is because the Democrats have moved the goalposts so far. They used to campaign on safe, legal, and rare. Now they campaign on abortion at any moment up till birth and including after birth. So I know the Democrats are trying to run away with this because it's
This is just another example of how the left has gone too far and why people are leaving the party. As Michael Knowles said there, it used to be safe and rare. I think that was like Clinton's stance. There's one other word there I'm missing. But safe and rare was the left stance on abortion. Now they want to advocate performing abortion at any time during the pregnancy. And yes, there are cases, especially in Minnesota, where Tim Walz passed extremely liberal abortion laws, and tampons in men's restrooms, but that's beside the point. So they've just gone so ridiculously far that there's no real nuanced conversation anymore. I can have a conversation with someone that says, yeah, it probably is taking a life, but I think in these cases it makes sense. I can understand that logic. When it's all or nothing, the way the Democrats want it now, they paint someone like me into a corner where there's no choice but to take the complete other side. Also, if you noticed, right at the end there, when Michael Knowles said they're performing abortions even after birth, the guy on the left chuckled. That seems to be the response of a lot of left-wingers, and it's very sad. I think they laugh because they're like, that's ridiculous, it doesn't happen. Well, it has happened, and with the Democrats' track record of taking things too far, if the right and Republicans don't stand up now and say this is wrong and lay out a strong pro-life case, who knows how far they could take it in the future. And that's scary. So I don't see anything funny about this. This is taking a life. Whether you want to call it that or not, that's what it is. And I guess they also chuckle because they're like, that's so silly. That's just a small portion. But I think most conservatives would say that any life taken is a big deal. Let's get back to the video.
Unpopular. But Andrew Cuomo, when he was governor of New York, was one of the first Democrat governors to change the law to say there will be no restrictions on abortion, even change the penal code such that if you killed a woman who was pregnant, it would no longer be double homicide. It would only be a single homicide. And then he lit up the Freedom Tower pink to celebrate. Tim Walz, as governor of Minnesota, repealed legal protections for babies who are born alive, who survive abortions. Babies can survive outside of the womb now as early as 24 weeks, 23 weeks, 22 weeks, even 21 weeks. So it's very, very young. Abortions take place up until the moment of birth. And so previously in Minnesota, there was a law that required doctors to provide medical care to babies who survive abortions, just as you would provide medical care to anybody who needed it. Tim Walz removed those protections. Tim Walz then also removed the reporting requirements. Now, we know the number is disputed, but we know somewhere at least 5, maybe 8, maybe more babies actually were born alive, and they were callously left to die without any medical care. So that's where we're fighting the issue right now, because it clarifies the issue so much, and it's where Democrats have brought the issue. It's not Republicans who have done that.
Well, Ryan, I saw your reaction to the after birth thing. Did you want to follow up on? I mean, Michael explained what happened in Minnesota, for example, which is it's a matter of not providing care, legalizing the declining to provide care. Is that not I mean, that is a real thing that both Cuomo, it was something that Ralph Northam advocated for.
I guess, why don't we leave this to doctors? Who am I to,
because we're citizens of a self-governing republic and we have laws against murder. It's so amazing that the Democrats, who have been campaigning for socialized medicine for decades now, say on this one healthcare issue, we just need to get the government out of it. What are you talking about? We're citizens. We live in a self-governing republic. We have something to say about the laws. That's why we're all talking about an election here. And we're talking about a matter of life and death, even if you take the babies out of it. For some reason, you don't like the babies. Yeah. But let's say you're just talking about, I don't know, a disabled woman or something, just an adult who is in the room, who requires desperate medical care in an emergency room. Would you say that doctors should just ignore her? Wouldn't you say that the law ought to impel medical providers to provide that urgent medical care? We have plenty of those laws on the books right now. Why is it just the case that when it comes to the most vulnerable, little babies, that for them, we, in the words of Ralph Northam, we just kind of put them on a table, maybe make them a little comfortable and have a conversation between the doctor and the mother to see if you want to kill them?
Yeah, I don't want babies to die either, but I think it becomes very difficult to talk about when there's an entire movement that thinks that having an IUD is killing a baby. So at that point,
so you keep trying to change the subject from the real political issue to a contrived political issue, because you know that the real political issue, as it's being fought, the Democrat position is completely indefensible and abhorrent to anyone who has even a modicum of a conscience. So you try to move to a contrived political issue.
So why not argue around there?
Like,
why not argue around the final trimester and supporting if a fetus is viable, then.
Well, hold on. There's a big difference between the final trimester and an IUD or something, right? There's a lot of space in the middle. And right now, the issue is that abortion is effectively legal at any point, including in some places after birth, which is just called murder. I think what the Democrats are trying to do is really blur this issue, and I'm all for having bioethical debates over the origin of life and all the right. I find that all very interesting. But we're in an election season, and what I'm observing is the actual political issue, the policies that are being advanced by the Democrats right now, all concern those latter stages, the much clearer point of this, up until the moment of birth, shout your abortion, changing the penal code, for goodness sakes, in New York. Why is it that the Democrats, why is it that you, Ryan, when we're debating this right now, you are desperately trying to avoid that part of it? Because you know that that's a losing issue for people.
Well, I'll tell you the reason. My view on this is I don't even want to have a view on this. Exactly. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I want this
slavery doesn't
to be left between women
That's an issue for the southern
doctor.
States. Forget about that. It's
not the southern states. It's for women and their doctors. Just work this. I trust them to make the decision that is best for them. And there's so much to think about in this world that why do I need to think about? I'm curious.
Why do I have to talk about infanticide or the law or elections or politics? I don't know, bro. Because you're a citizen in a self-governing republic, and this is a deeply important moral issue.
There's a lot of deeply important moral issues. Why do you care so much about this? I'm just curious. I don't even necessarily want to debate the question because I'm not sure there's even that much point. But what?
I'm happy to tell you why. Because the right to life is not just one right among many. It's not like the privilege to drive a car or the right to smoke a cigarette at the age of 21. The right to life is the fundamental right on which all of the other rights rely. It cuts down to the very core of our being. So this is why we have very serious laws against murder. It's why we take murder laws and murder trials more seriously than laws about jaywalking or tickets about parking. So this is obviously a really important issue. Cuts to the heart of who we are, how we think about all of morality and all of the law and all of the human person. And the people who we're talking about here are the most vulnerable people among us who don't have a voice, who are innocent little babies. So to me, that seems kind of important. I know there are a lot of big issues in the world, but I think I would put jaywalking or even tax rates at a less significant part of this debate than say the right to life.
Yeah, I mean, when again pursuing that question, when in your life did women's pregnancies become something that you were this is the thing I really am going to make my
Well, it's not women's pregnancies became important to me when my wife was pregnant for the first time because I had to, go get her like snacks and things at night. But life, the question of human life, morality has been a question for a long time. I mean, if you're interested in politics and you're not interested in practical morality, well, I don't really know what you're doing, because the law, by definition, is a codification of practical moral views. And I, by the way,
but I guess for you, is this like an always thing? Is this an always thing? Like the first time in like middle school you learned about it, you're like, I need to fight for these.
I mean, he's Catholic, right, Michael?
No. I'm Catholic, but I was an apostate for a long time. So I was, from the age of 13 to 23, I was pretty irreligious. And so I was in favor of legal abortion. I had no problem with it. I didn't understand why pro-lifers believed in it. And I was having a lunch one day during a summer fellowship with a bioethicist. And she was asking me my views on things. And I said, I'm a Republican. I like low taxes, but I don't care about abortion. I think it's fine. And then we had a long conversation about it. And she persuaded me that I was wrong. So I know in our modern day, it's unusual for people to be persuaded by arguments, but she persuaded me that there's really no argument for abortion, and that the argument in favor of life and defending the preborn is pretty much rock solid.
You were 23?
No, I was 21 during that lunch. I was 23 when I reverted to the church.
And so you're 21 and you got argued into being anti-abortion
by a very intelligent bioethicist. Yeah.
Well,
okay.
Did you catch the end there where the host said something to the effect of, "Oh, you were 21 years old and some lady changed your mind"? Was that supposed to be some dig? And then he said, "Interesting," as if Michael Knowles is weak-minded or something like that. It was a bioethicist that he respects. I don't know if there's a better individual that could change your mind. This very dismissive host reminds me of the entire Democrat Party when it comes to talking about pro-lifers, pro-choice. He wants to put blinders on. You heard him say a couple of times, "I just trust the doctors and the women to figure it out. I don't want to think about it." You're telling me that human beings, doctors, no matter how smart they are, might not have some incentive to push an abortion on someone? That's what the majority of Democrat lawmakers would like to do. That's why if they're in Congress or on the street and someone is pro-life and they have a picture of baby being aborted with its limbs being pulled off by forceps, they don't want to see that. Why not? Because that's the reality that they're trying to hide from by saying things like women's reproductive rights instead of saying abortions. That's why they insist on calling it a fetus and not a baby. Only when it's convenient for them, though. If you're having a baby shower and you're keeping your baby, it's a baby. You don't call it a fetus shower. I understand that you could argue that's a social norm, but they pick and choose when they want to use certain words around abortions. And another tactic I see all the time in defense of abortion is to immediately tell a horrific story about rape or incest, which I don't know a human alive that doesn't think that's vile. But they'll use that as their main talking point when, I'm not looking at the numbers now, but I believe that the percentage of abortions in this country that are as a result of rape or incest is less than 2%. It might be 1%, but I'm pretty sure it's 2%. So the majority of them are happening because it's an inconvenience for the person, not because the mother's life is in danger. The vast majority of people are treating it like birth control. That's a problem. But no one wants to talk about that and talk about the reality of ripping a life out of someone's womb. And the host on there that was the antagonist used similar arguments when he brings up IUD or IVF. It's to get away from the vast majority of the cases that we're talking about here, right? The disgusting truth about what abortion really is. So they want to obfuscate the issue and not talk about the main thing that pro-life advocates have a problem with. I'll wrap up with this. I can't say for sure, but I would venture to guess that that host is not a Christian. I'm not saying there can't be Christians that are pro-choice, and I'm not disrespecting anyone that is. However, when you're a Christian, your values aren't subjective. You have a manual, the Bible, right? You can go to that It'll give you the answer for any of your moral questions, or if you're questioning your values, you go to that. If you're an atheist or non-believer, your values can be subjective. You get to pick and choose which things work for you. So I'll say this: murder is evil. I don't throw this around lightly, but while the Republican Party, the right, conservatives, there are plenty of horrible people on that side of the spectrum. I do believe this is a battle between good and evil, and you have to pick your side. The right wing more closely aligns with my values, my Christian values, and that's why I support it. And it's not perfect. We're human beings, and we do a lot of awful stuff, me included. We're looking at a battle between good and evil here. And I pray every day that more and more people come back to the church, come back to Judeo-Christian values, because that's what this country was founded on, and a lot of society's ills could be remedied by going back to those values. That's it for today's video. If you like watching videos like these of leftists getting owned, then click on one of the two videos that just popped up on your screen. Otherwise, we really appreciate you being here. We'll catch you on the next one.